George Zimmerman is auctioning off the gun he used to kill Trayvon Martin, and a number of people have created fake accounts in order to put in astronomical bids, which obviously are not real. Now, some of the nicknames that people have given themselves in these accounts are pretty hilarious. I'll give you some examples. At one point early Friday, the bidding surpassed $65 million, with the leading bidder using the screen name Racist McShootface. The site later showed that account had been deleted.
Huh, that one was fake, huh?
Yeah.
Surprised it wasn't taken, honestly.
It's always so disheartening when cold-blooded murderers turn out to be such dicks.
I know. Who could see that coming?
Yeah.
Who did?
And then they get punked like this. Poor guy.
Can he catch a break?
No, except from the legal justice system.
Yeah. I think he might have
Criminal
caught
justice.
one.
Well, I think he did catch one.
Yeah. So we also had shaniqua, bonifa, and then Donald Trump was bidding on the gun, apparently. So it was hosted by United Gun Group because the auction was seen as too dirty for gunbroker.com. Like gunbroker.com, who's normally like, yeah, let's go. What are we doing? It's like, whoa.
So United Gun Group is a real thing, not a parody.
Yes, that's real.
They're the people who actually, okay.
Gunbroker was like, this is too gross for us.
We don't want the publicity. We don't want the attention. We are taking the listing off.
Right. And United Gun Group was like, I jump in it.
Yeah.
Yes, nothing's too dirty or gross for us. Oh, you killed a 17-year-old kid with it? Yes, let's make money off it.
You know, bidding on the gun started at $5,000.
Oh, you know what? I'm getting I'm getting reports right now in my ear that there is a Trump delegate who is emptying his life savings into buying a gun. I don't know exactly what that means.
Yeah. And so now this is a very ironic empathy I have for George Zimmerman on the only thing that I've ever had any empathy on him for, because remember I tried to sell my old warhorse, the Pontiac Grand Am, that Dave and I crossed the country with to start the show. I had for like a decade while we're while we're doing the Young Turks, and I put it up on eBay and I thought auction it to get money for Wolfpack, right? Not for me, obviously. And unlike Zimmerman, who's like, yeah, I'll give some money to some really obnoxious conservative causes and fight against Black Lives Matter, some of the proceeds would have been like 1 to 5% of the proceeds, right? No, 100% of the proceeds were going to go to Wolfpack. No, but, you know, racist McShootface and his buddies all come in. They're like, oh, we're going to, your buddy, great, yeah, $50 million. Like, all right, Dick. Now, all right, so in this case, they busted up the most unworthy cause in human history, so thank you.
Yeah.
But this is actually problematic for everyone who's doing anything publicly, because the minute you start doing a public auction, the trolls roll in with McBoatfaces everywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's interesting because, you know, after I have my wedding, I was wondering, like, okay, so what do you do with your wedding dress, right? I don't want it collecting dust in the closet.
Donate it to Zimmerman.
So they donate it to someone who needs it, and I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. But I thought about auctioning it because wedding dresses are insanely expensive, and I'm like, maybe I can get some of this money back, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it's the same problem. I mean, people, especially if you're a public figure, and of course there are tons of people out there that don't like me, which is fine. They're gonna mess around with the auction and they're gonna ruin it. So might as well
George
give it
Zimmerman
away
problems.
to someone who needs it.
Yeah.
I tried to bid on the gun. And it was because they have them in categories, and it was under the category of used items that make you give up on humanity.
Yeah.
So
There are a lot in that category, I think.
there are
A lot of different editions.
Well, you know, so, and I guess this is the one time the trolls have helped humanity, so we should note that. So thank you for that. But Jimmy's right. I mean, it's so disgusting that even Bill O'Reilly came out and called it despicable.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
And he said, look, no matter what you think, a 17-year-old was killed here, and that's a tragedy. And
Right.
you shouldn't profit off a tragedy. This is despicable. And he ended the program by saying, sometimes you have to make judgments about people's behavior. Like, meaning not only is this despicable, but now I'm beginning to question George
For the
Zimmerman.
first time ever.
Right. I didn't question him when he stalked that kid and killed him.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't question it when he got off, right? I didn't, all these things. But now he's like, whoa.
I didn't question him when he beat up his wife or his
He's an
girlfriend.
equal opportunity violent person.
Now,
though,
to be
so I
fair,
like that.
yeah, to be
Not
fair,
just race.
he beat
That's
up
true.
2 different girlfriends. his wife, he just destroyed her property in a fit of rage.
Not only did
Because he respects the sanctity of marriage.
That's right. That's right.
But it's so interesting because the justice system in several different cases has been slanted in his favor, right? So in the case of his ex-wife, after she had filed divorce papers, they got into an altercation where he broke her iPad, which is what you're talking about. We covered that story on the Young Turks. And what we did is we showed you video surveillance of him breaking her iPad, right? They decided not to press charges against him because there wasn't enough evidence that he had damaged her property. What? Why? Why? How much more evidence do you need? It's incredible. It's slanted in his favor.
No, I get that his wife and the two girlfriends changed their testimony, and that makes it much harder to prosecute. But in that case, you had the
On
video,
film, right.
him. It's not like you can't tell who George Zimmerman is, right? And it's with his wife inside his house, and you see him smash the iPad.
There was no smoking gun. There just wasn't.
Yeah, and they're like, what? Oh, I don't see a guilty. I don't see any evidence. And I mean, but then are we surprised? He stalked somebody with a gun who didn't have a gun, and then he shot him in the chest, and they're like, yeah, it was Trayvon Martin's fault.
Yeah.
And remember Marissa Alexander? Do you remember the story about a black woman in Florida, also in Florida, who literally had an abusive husband who would admit in a deposition or an affidavit that he put his hands on all his baby mamas or baby's mamas, I'm not sure. But anyway, she shot at the wall to keep him away from her because he was threatening her.
I remember the story, yeah.
There were two kids in the room. She did not shoot them or shoot at them. She shot at the wall to scare him off. And she was not allowed to use the stand your ground defense because she's a black woman.
Yeah.
So just in case you want to know how it works. So don't even try to use it unless if you're victims of black male, it's helpful, but not if you're a black woman.
That's
This is a PSA for people.
That's a rare exception to you can shoot in the vicinity of black males and get away with it.
Exactly.
Unless you're a black woman.
In which case, it's,
Right.
there's a loophole.
But in all of that.
And she was in jail. I mean, she's been released since, but she was in jail.
For a while,
Yeah.
But I think that the upside of the story is that we have found, finally, the bottom of the barrel. Because all of that didn't bother O'Reilly or Fox News. And I know that some people will still defend Zimmerman. But at least we have found a bottom for O'Reilly, where he says, after you killed a 17-year-old kid, which I was kind of on your side on, at least don't try to profit off of his death. That seems a little too much.
Jay, I mean, first of all, let's take Zimmerman's side for a second because he just used this for a little money to tide him over until Trump makes him attorney general.
It's true.
Well, Trump is thinking about it.
Makes him look fiscally responsible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Responsible, I mean.
Every time they've asked him about any cabinet position, he's named someone on TV, okay? And including for a Supreme Court's obviously not cabinet position, but even more important, and he's like Judge Napolitano.
Oh my God.
That's right.
Because he's the only judge he knows. Because he saw him on TV.
He saw him on TV.
What about Judge Judy?
Joe Brown.
Can you imagine if he's like Judge Judy?
She's too liberal for him.
Hey, Bush picked his
Secretary.
his
or house
secretary,
cleaner? I don't
who
remember.
had a law degree.
Harry Myers, right?
And they wouldn't let him do it. Why? Because they were afraid she wouldn't be against abortion hard enough. Remember that?
That's right. Not because she was the secretary.
Not because she was a secretary and wasn't really a legal mind.
Yeah. And mind you, she was not, look, she was not a secretary as in Secretary of State.
Right. She was an administrative assistant, which I don't want to, like, we're not classist and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not the job you have right before joining
The Supreme Court.
Supreme Court.
Right,
It's not
you're
the
right.
typical trajectory.
And to be fair to her, it was like somewhere between like administrative assistant and Secretary of State. Like it was like, well, but you're an administrative assistant for like the president.
Right, it's
That's
true,
kind of
right,
like a
right,
big
right,
deal. That's a
right,
nice job,
right.
right?